Welcome to episode 107 of the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I am a board-certified sports dietitian and runner based in Santa Cruz, California. I'm also the founder and owner of Eat for Endurance, a virtual private nutrition coaching practice. So first off, I want to wish all of you a very happy new year. I hope you all had a great holiday season, whatever you celebrate. I'm recording this episode in mid-December and am about to take a couple weeks off of work and a month off from the podcast, which is a huge deal because, as you may know, taking time off of a small business is really hard to do. It's hard to fully step away from everything, but I'm going to do my best, give it my best shot, and we'll see. We are spending a few days up in Tahoe with friends, and which should be fun. And we're also hosting our third annual New Year's Eve bash at our house, which essentially is just a ton of parents of young kids like us with nothing better to do. So we all hang out and eat and drink. The kids go wild, and we all attempt to stay up until 9 p.m. to watch the ball drop in New York City. So it should be tons of fun. My house will most definitely be trashed, but I always have a great time. All right, so let's get to the show today. We are kicking off season 7 of the podcast with Kylee Van Horn and Zoë Rom. They are best friends, they're trail running buddies, running coaches, Aussie dog moms, Colorado residents, and together they now also co-host an awesome podcast that we'll be talking about today called Your Diet Sucks. Kylee is a sports dietitian with a private practice called Fly Nutrition, which helps runners, triathletes, cyclists, and skiers learn the why as well as the how behind fueling for performance. You may also remember Kylee from an episode that we did together on my show last year, all about winter fueling. Zoë is a journalist and writer specializing in environmental science, policy, endurance sports, and public land, and she currently hosts and produces Your Diet Sucks as well as the Trailhead podcasts. She also is an ultra runner with top finishes at several major events, including the Leadville 100, and she's a stand-up comedian, so she wears a lot of hats. We cover a ton of different topics today, including why athletes are more vulnerable to diet BS and diet cults, how to spot and reject nutrition misinformation, which is so important, especially this time of year, how to become the best version of yourself without falling prey to the world of data and optimization, and weeding through helpful and harmful supplementation with a focus on a few specific supplements, including ketones and sodium bicarbonate. We finished the episode with Kylie's and Zoe's nutrition hot takes and learned about what's new and exciting in each of their worlds. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to share something that I'm really excited about. I am offering a brand new monthly membership service that I started called Fuel for Life Crew. So that's, I guess, the Fuel for Life Crew or Fuel for Life Crew. I haven't decided, but that's the name. It's a community where you will get clarity and confidence in your everyday nutrition. You will learn how to take care of you while juggling all of the things. I mean, we're all pretty much in that situation, right? You're joining a supportive community while also having access to me, an experienced sports dietitian, to answer all your nutrition questions. You get science-backed strategies to enhance health and athletic performance. You get to learn about the topics you really care about. You connect with like-minded active people. And of course, you're going to have fun. It's just $30 a month, and your membership includes direct support from me and a group of awesome people like you. You get a private Slack channel organized by different areas of interest, get live Q&A calls and presentations on nutrition topics that you help choose. And of course, replays are available if you can't make it. And you get full access to past and future masterclasses and digital downloads at no extra cost. I mean, that alone is worth like 3 months of the membership cost. It really is the easiest and most cost-effective way to work with me, especially since you can join monthly and cancel anytime. And I will be giving 50% off the first month to anyone who joins in January, so get to it. You can get more info by visiting my website, eatforendurance.com, as well as the show notes. All right, so that was a long intro. Thanks for bearing with me. Here is my chat with Kylee Van Horn and Zoë Rom. Hey guys, so great to have you here. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, Kylee. How are you guys doing today?
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here for the first time.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking of you both this morning, and as well as your awesome new podcast, Your Diet Sucks. When I got a very typical podcast pitch email, I sent it to your Instagram. It was just so typical, as this person was presenting some guy with a huge following who was apparently, and I quote, the voice of all things related to biohacking. That was an automatic delete for me, and it made me think of your recent episode all about biohacking. So I'm just like so glad you guys are here and not biohackers. I just wanted to share that with you.
We're not here to talk about stem cell regeneration today.
Yeah. I was like, what the?
We get those too, and they always just sound like a Mad Libs of just like pseudoscientific wackery.
I know. Yeah. Well, I have a rule. If the word biohacking is anywhere in your email, like it's gone. I don't care who you are or what's going on. It's deleted. So that's just my rule. Anywho, so you guys are friends, you're running buddies, you live in the same town. I believe you have the same breed of dog even, and now you co-host a podcast together. So I thought it would be fun just to hear a little bit about how you guys met and became friends, just to kick things off.
I want to hear your side of the story, Kylee. I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, no, and I actually, Zoe told this story last week, I think. So that's the only reason why I remember it. I'm like not good at remembering this kind of stuff, but my husband is an ultra endurance athlete, and he was doing this 24 hours of skimo to try and like break the uphill world record thing. This was back in 2019. And Zoe was there kind of supporting her partner at the time that was supporting my husband. So we all kind of met at this endurance event, typical for our endurance athlete side of things.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Anything to add to that, Zoe?
No, just that I feel like we're just like the classic, like when Harry met Sally couple, like we do everything together.
It seems like it.
Running respite, but when she was running, we like consistently ran with our dogs every Friday. And she, has been like one of my most consistent running partners, work collaborators, receiver of panicked text messages, helping me avoid making as many dietary horrible decisions as I'm want to make.
Yeah, she's a good one to know if you're an ultra runner. That's a good friend to have.
Before I do races, like in the days leading up, I just send her deranged texts of like, is it okay for me to eat this? She's like, okay, that's a lot of fiber.
Yeah, totally. So what prompted you guys to start the podcast together?
Well, we had really sort of been thinking about like just kind of looking at the podcast marketplace and seeing that there was a bit of a gap in terms of like, there's a lot of really cool stuff being done out there, but there isn't the thing we wanted, which was something that both felt like really fun and lively, but also was really well researched and had like a slightly higher production value. I feel that there are plenty of men talking to each other and at one another about science in the space. Yeah. And we were like, she has this amazing background as a clinician and as a registered dietitian. So she has all these like amazing, just like, here's what this looks like, where the rubber meets the road of fueling endurance athletes. And as a journalist, I'm always fascinated with like the meta narratives, like, why is it so, like, why do I have so many confusing ideas about carbs or about fat or about protein? And like, if like at the super zoomed out level, like what are the stories we're telling ourselves about food? And I actually got my start as a food journalist. And so I feel like that was something that sort of led to like that would fomented our friendship, as well as that we're both really interested in food, and her perspective on it is so different than mine and really challenging to mine in a super helpful way that, it's the sort of like stereotypical, like two runners think the conversations they have on runs are just not to be missed. Like, how could we deny our friends and neighbors the just absolutely essential conversations that we're having?
Yeah.
But again, like I thought our professional experience did bring something a bit unique to it.
Yeah, I agree. You guys, I've told you guys, I love your show. I think it's great. I've listened to all your podcast episodes so far. I think you're 12 deep in, and a lot of really cool topics. But I think what I love is that you get this kind of dose of like almost like history lesson, like it's a well-researched history of whatever the topic is. And then of course, you're both bringing in some, especially Kylee, some practical kind of evidence-based takeaways from it and like understanding it. You bring like real life experiences of like, this is how I've experienced this thing. Cause we're all human beings with our struggles and whatever else. And then there's like a heavy dose of comedy, which is always great. Right. So I think it's a nice balance.
I'm not the comedian. I wish I was, but her brain works better that way. So
well, you're like the laughter support. So it's, no, it's good. I think it's a nice it's a nice way of presenting like these topics in a different way. And I'm a big believer. I mean, we kind of hammer in a lot of the same messaging, but it just takes so many times repeating a lot of these themes over and over again. So I love that it's like coming in all these different packages from all these different places. So yeah, I think that's really great. And just, I mean, you've covered so many different topics so far, and many we're going to touch on today, or a few we're going to touch on today. I'm curious, what has been your favorite episode and why so far?
I really liked we did an episode about orthorexia, and this, I mean, one of my fascinations is like, can I use like the framework that I use as a journalist to investigate my own prejudices or preconceived notions about food? And like, as a journalist in eating disorder recovery, like some of my tendencies in the past had like definitely abutted orthorexic tendencies, and looking at the research and sometimes even the lack of research around orthorexia as a unofficial eating disorder, I thought was really, really interesting. And just like looking at all the really fascinating research on like how that particular understanding of food works in the brain, and like understanding that the way our emotions are processed in the brain, and how closely that is tied to a sense of like disgust and a sense of morality, really helped me understand like this sort of feeling that I have had, that like there is a tendency around moralization of food in our culture, that there's actually like a neuroscientific understanding of that as well. Really, really blew my mind and helped me understand the idea of orthorexia, or the idea of clean eating, from a much more, yes, evidence-based, but also compassionate perspective. Like the thing I love about science is that it pushes me to be more compassionate and understanding, and to broaden my lens instead of narrowing it.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Kylee?
So far, so we have an episode, spoiler alert, coming out about sugar.
Ooh, I can't wait for that one.
and that honestly is one of my favorites so far that we've recorded. But I also really liked the biohacking one, because it's one of those topics where I hear about a lot of these things from clients, and then I'm like, I looking into it, it's just like a bunch of BS. So it was fun to do some research on that and get more insight on biohacking and like the specific modalities of biohacking that people talk about. And yeah, just be able to like see that from a different lens in practice too.
Yeah. And if listeners don't know what biohacking even means, because like, what the fuck? I mean, whatever. Like, go listen to that episode. It was a good deep dive into that. We could go into so many different directions today. And, we wanted to kind of touch on some of the topics you already covered, and you guys have provided a lot to dig into. But since this episode is coming out in the new year, I thought it would be really appropriate to start to chat about why athletes fall for diet BS, which is, of course, the topic of your very first episode. So let's just dive into that to start out with. Why are athletes so vulnerable to diet trends?
So looking at the research, there is a little bit of sort of scientific inquiry into looking at if athletes are especially susceptible to pseudoscience. And I mean, there's only been a couple studies, and it sort of indicates that like, well, it's about the same as the overall population. However, maybe the downsides of athletes getting really interested in pseudoscience can be larger than just like, John Q driveway in Ohio getting super into it. And I think that it also comes from sometimes like a desire to optimize and a desire to perform at our best. And when you're an athlete, you are, or if you're me at least, you're constantly running up against the limits of what you're capable of. And there's always this temptation to try something new or different or wacky, or find a shortcut or a hack or a silver bullet to just do better and to be better and to feel better, when so often the answers are much less sexy and way more complicated. And often they're not these like small interventions that have huge results, but it's just like, get 8 hours of sleep, eat some vegetables, do a little strength training.
Yeah.
And I'm sure do you see it? I mean, I'm sure you see it in practice, right, Claire? It's like people come in and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm on this like extreme thing, this extreme diet, or taking these crazy supplements, and they're hoping for these big results. But in reality, they don't have the foundation style.
And something that really blew my mind is we did an episode on the parallels between cults and diet culture.
Yes, that was a good one.
Study that was done in the 90s that showed that people are actually more likely to join cults or groups or religions that are stricter as opposed to ones that are less strict. Like, especially in a modern era when people are looking for ways of like self-identification and of building community and belonging, increasingly in a particularly in a secular society, people are doing that through diet. And somewhat maybe counterintuitively, the stricter the diet is, the more compelling it is to our brains that need a way to belong, that are always trying to find an us versus them framework to fit ourselves in. So things like paleo, keto, raw vegan, like the stricter, the more alluring it is to a particular subset of people who maybe don't have as strong a sense of community or identity outside of their ways of eating.
Or it just makes sense from the standpoint of, and I know, Kylee, you encounter this with clients all the time, that like sense of control or just like having rigidity and rules. I mean, obviously, like living in nuance and in the gray areas, which is like where we want to be, is so hard for people, especially when they're struggling with whether it's with their body or whatever it is, right? Like, I mean, how many people, Kylee, have you had that just want a meal plan or just tell me what to do? You know, it's like, give me like, just I'll follow this and this. And it's like, oh, hey, no, you actually have to learn how to like apply principles of things and be flexible. And it's a lot harder to do that when you have space, right? So it's hard to be flexible for many people.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll mention to people that I don't do that. Like, I don't make meal plans and whatnot, and we'll still get on like the first one-on-one call. And I think there's still this like expectation that I'm going to make a meal plan. I'm like, nope, we talked about this. Like, it's going to take more work than that, unfortunately, but fortunately for you in the long term.
Exactly. I mean, like, we're not doing our jobs if like we stop our work together and then they have no idea what to do. Like, it's like we have failed miserably. So yeah, no, I you know, it's like whenever it's always the same BS. January comes around, how many people are doing like Whole30 or the whatever detox, whatever. And so I think this, again, I'm so glad you guys are here for this particular episode, because I just really want to remind everybody that just because it's January, our goals don't change. You know, our nutrition needs don't change. Like, nothing's changing. It's just this arbitrary, like, oh, hey, it's January 1st. And like, let's dive into all this fresh stuff. It's like, okay, well, you know what? Your body doesn't know or care. We still need to support ourselves.
Yeah. We have an episode coming out about New Year's resolutions and
great.
Particularly when it comes to diet and nutrition. And in fact, making goals around January 1, you have a 9% chance of succeeding past a month. So that might actually be the least helpful framework possible. And I think so often, again, people always want to like go big or go home. And oftentimes that means they just end up going home rather than like striving for, you know, some like sustainability, consistency, nailing the foundations. People want to like, I'm going to cut out this macronutrient and like I'm going to cook every single meal from scratch and I'm going to hand grind all my grains. And it's like, that's just not practical, sustainable, or like really even healthy when you try to broaden your lens and think about health as more than just like calories in, calories out, which is not a nuanced or even scientifically accurate understanding of health, and thinking of it as like social health, mental health, physical health, family health, like all of these different dynamics that are an essential part of how I think that we should see health and how food can play into it, and how food is more than fuel. It is connection and relationships, and trying to distill it down to just like, you know, like input and output is an overly simplified understanding that I think will always leave people wanting more.
Yeah, totally. And such a huge piece of this too is like the misinformation out there. And of course, come January, even though, I mean, I don't know about you, I feel like I live in an echo chamber on Instagram. Like, words like biohacking are not anywhere in my thing unless like Kylie's making fun of it or something, you know. So you making fun of it? Like, that's the only place I see this stuff. But in terms of misinformation, it's everywhere and people get bombarded all the time, but especially kind of in January. So maybe we can just spend a moment to talk about this, because there is a lot of really helpful and evidence-based content on social media and elsewhere online. Like, we don't want to discount that. So it's not to say it's all bad out there, right? But it can be really, really confusing and flat out scary. Like, it's just scary, some of the shit that's out there. So Maybe you can give some the listeners some tips. I know this is something you covered in that episode of yours, some red flags or things that people can look out so that they can really spot and reject nutrition misinformation.
I feel like if it provokes a strong emotional response, that's a great way of checking that it probably isn't accurate. Oftentimes things put out on social media are like intentionally try to harness people's emotions. That's how the attention economy works, but that's not usually how nutrition science works. Like I've almost never read a study and like had a strong emotional response. I usually walk away saying, that's interesting. That's complicated. And I have a lot more questions, but it doesn't usually I'm not like reading a study and I'm like, yes, queen, preach. Like that's not how science works. So I feel like anytime things are portrayed in an overly simplified black and white manner or have like an extremely like fear-mongery sense or like they're trying to gin up a big emotional response, that often I think should elicit a gut check for people.
Yeah. And we did an episode on like the impact of influence and social media on people. And it's funny because I'm sure you've experienced this, but like you'll curate this like nice sciencey post for Instagram or something, and it gets like no views and like no one interacts with it. And then there's some like extreme like statement somewhere and people are all over it, So those extreme, I mean, honestly, like I'm always trying to challenge myself in how I can do a hot take that's interesting, that's science-based. So I do my hot takes sometimes, and those do generate an emotional response, but oftentimes it's not like some kind of random thing. Like if you take this pill, you're going to, have some magical thing happen to your performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, to Zoe's point, it's like reading a scientific article or reading some curated scientific post likely isn't going to get the kind of engagement on social media too.
I honestly I have no idea how engagement works. I am just so confused by the algorithm. I've fully given up. I just I don't know. I find the whole thing so discouraging, but I do agree with you. It's I never know what's going to do well and what's not, but I do know that like certain things, like pretty sure that, I think I posted like a reel when because I just gotten into swimming. So I've posted a reel in my bathing suit that got more views. Yeah, not trying to sexualize myself, but just saying.
That's like the upsetting, when you do learn more about how the algorithm works, like none of that information helps me sleep better at night. And there was actually one really interesting study that we looked at on our influencer episode that looked at how the act of being an influencer actually changes the mental health and self-perception of people who are doing the influencing. A lot of our episode is exploring how the people who are consuming that content, how that impacts them. But there was a study that showed that, because influencing is dominated by women, that's an industry that's essentially run by women. Women out-earn men, which is, I think, really interesting. But women will start to self-objectify. They start to see themselves as objects. And there was one study that, and this is, fast forward if you're someone who is, this is like, if social media body stuff, not your jam, fast forward a couple minutes, but that looked specifically at like when you saw like a very thin collarbone exposed or like certain body parts, when those were represented in certain like sexual ways or ways that were meant to like highlight how skinny the individual was, those had higher rates of engagement. And I think that to me
crazy.
Was like terrifying, is that
is scary.
Algorithm is actually incentivizing us representing the stuff of our very bodies in specific ways to sell products made by corporations who like frankly do not care about us. And I think that to me was really convicting in terms of like, is all the things that we know about the algorithm, I think should make us all think really long and hard about what we consume and what we put out there to be consumed, and to always check ourselves. And I always so admire folks like y'all who are so committed to your values online that you will storytell in the way that feels authentic to your values, but not like there are women who aren't able to do that or who are choosing not to do that, and it impacts their mental health. It impacts how they see themselves, and then there are trickle down effects in terms of how that impacts other younger women, other women who are struggling with body image issues as well.
Yeah, and I find it all very interesting because I'm like, of course, never intentionally exposing my body to get engagement. Like that's just nothing I would ever be interested in or want. But I want to, like, if I want to show my body, I don't care if people see me in a bathing suit. And it's more important, it's like the messaging of like, hey, I've been teaching myself how to swim. It's been this super challenging thing that I've started, and I'm proud of it. And it's like it's not about my body at all. You know what I mean? It's just about something totally different. I happen to be in a bathing suit. Like, who the fuck cares? Like, you know, or like whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's all very interesting, this stuff and how it works.
Yeah, it's just tough that knowing that the algorithm
Mm-hmm.
isn't neutral, even though like the act of us wanting to show up and just like, this is my lived experience. Sometimes I run in a sports bra, like it's inauthentic for me to like cover that up. But how do I think it just, for me, it's like always keeping my eye trained on like you said, just trying to really manage that image and understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing and how those things like on the other end of the spectrum can really be spun up to other people's detriment.
Well, and then the other thing that we talked about we've talked about it in some interviews, I think, but about how like you can try to curate your feed. Like you can go and do this like social media cleanse and try to follow positive accounts, but then you'll like get shown a video on the explore page or something and you look at it and then like it changes your whole again. And so you're like trying to protect yourself, but then the algorithm like brings things back in.
Yeah.
Wild.
I think it also depends what platform you're on. So I mean, I'd say I'm mostly on Instagram. I can't do TikTok. I've like dabbled in Threads, but like Threads, I also just find weird and I don't know. And that's actually been even like everyone was saying, oh, it's better than the old Twitter. What is it now? X, whatever it's called. I can't keep up. Whatever. I'm not on there anymore. But I find it almost as bad. And then, you like click on one thing and suddenly the entire thing becomes that thing. And it's, I don't know. It's social media is so tricky. And again, it's not all bad. There's so much great stuff out there, but it's also not, I mean, I don't think it's good for my mental health. And I feel like my social media is pretty, like, it's in a pretty good place. But it's a little, but yeah.
Battle for all of us.
I know. Today's show is brought to you by my virtual private practice, Eat for Endurance. I've been working with a wide range of active people for over a decade now to help them feel their best in their everyday and athletic lives, and I would love to help you too. I offer a ton of free and low-cost resources on my website, eatforendurance.com, if you prefer to learn on your own, and I also offer a monthly one-to-one nutrition coaching program if you need more personalized support. In one-to-one coaching, we explore your unique history, we assess you as a whole person in the context of your busy life, and strategize how to achieve realistic, sustainable health and performance goals. We deep dive into everyday eating, sports nutrition, gut health, lab work, body image, and whatever else you need to feel and perform your best. I've helped clients overcome low energy, GI issues, nutrient deficiencies, difficult relationships with food and body, poor athletic performance, injury, and so much more. It is my busiest times of year right now, so if you have an event that you're training for or other nutrition health goals that you really want to work on in 2025, I suggest you reach out ASAP. You can book a free nutrition call with me to make sure we're the right fit, and then we can see what makes sense for you. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, I do have a brand new monthly membership community called the Fuel for Life Crew. It's just $30 a month, or if you grab it in January, your first month is only $15, and that gets you all of my digital downloads, my masterclasses, all of it, and access to me as well. So that's a really great step if you're a past nutrition client and you want to, you miss having me in your pocket, or if you're new to me and you just want to try things out and see how I roll. Again, you can visit my website, eatforendurance.com, to explore the many different ways we can work together. All right, back to the episode. All right, changing gears now. So you have a whole episode on data and optimization. You mentioned the word optimize at one point. I want to unpack that word because I feel like, first of all, I don't know, I find myself using that word optimize once in a while, though I try to use it less. It feels a little more cringe to me these days. But yeah, I just want to unpack that word because there's this fine line between, and you mentioned this earlier about yourself, Zoe, like becoming this best version of yourself and finding out like how you can push yourself to become better, and then taking things a little too far. And I know you guys have explored this in various ways. But yeah, so I think this kind of bridges a little bit that biohacking space a little bit, and and then like being really obsessed about all these gadgets and the numbers, the data, all that stuff. But not to say there's anything, like, I don't want to send the message there's anything wrong, obviously, with pushing yourself to be better and trying different, whether it's like, sports supplements or different things that have valid research, or you just want to experiment, whatever. So I'm curious your guys' take. Maybe we can bring that discussion from your pod a little bit here on this topic of like finding that line.
Yeah, I think like for me, like again, like as a competitive ultra runner, like I am obsessed with getting better. I love training and I think a lot about how to get better. But I think where I bump on optimization culture is that I feel like culture is trying to hand me a narrative of what optimization is. And for me, when I think about what it is, it's like being the pursuit of getting better and feeling more connected in my life and feeling like what I'm doing in my athletics or in my professional work or creative work feels in line with my values. But the cultural narrative, like what I always think of is like the like longevity obsessed guy who's like never going to eat dessert so that he can live like 90 days longer overall. And it's like, well, what's the point of like just living longer and working out harder to be like less present in your life? Like, what's the point of health if like you can't like hang out with friends at night and you can't go out in the sun and like you can only drink water? And, you know, I'm not telling people to like veer way on the other side and go ham and live like totally unhealthfully. But I think that so often like optimization culture and the cult of optimization hands us this narrative of like, you must try to optimize at all costs with this myopic vision of what health is. And I would like to challenge people to define what optimization looks like for them and to not let supplement companies and gadget companies and podcasters, even us, define what that looks like for them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've been told that it looks like one thing. And again, I want people to challenge themselves. I want people to want to be better and to live healthier and to make better decisions. But I don't think that like cutting out carbs and cake and like friendships and prioritizing your like vitamin stack and your journaling routine, like over, community, like caring for your community and connecting with people. I don't think that that's health. And I get really worried about how, particularly like in the world of fitness and athletes, our vision of what healthy is has become so narrow and small in a lot of places.
Yeah. How do you see that play out in your practice, Kylee?
Yeah, no, I find that people have kind of lost the ability to recognize how they feel versus like with the optimization and the numbers game and all the gadgets, that they're so focused on trying to hit a certain thing that then they don't realize like, oh, what are my hunger and fullness cues? Oh, how am I actually feeling this day? And I don't know about you, but I tend to like then reel them in and I'm like, let's actually make this a goal. Like maybe you can pay attention to how you're actually feeling and see if we can rein that in a little bit more so that you can maybe combine the two. Like I think it's okay to use some of these tools in a certain way, but then it's like when it gets in the way of how your body actually feels or how to recognize certain signals, I think that's where it can become a problem. And then also looking at from the propensity for endurance athletes to maybe skew more towards eating disorders. You know, if you're always trying to look at numbers and optimize things, is that going to lead you down a road that you're maybe, it might not end up so well in the end, even though you didn't have the intention or didn't realize that you were going to go down that road.
Yeah. And I actually just remembered, I don't know if you guys read McSweeney's ever. Do you read McSweeney's? Oh my God. Do you know what I'm thinking of? The optimization essay? Have you guys read that? I have to send it to you. Okay. Like I have to find it. I remember it was hilarious. It was basically, I mean, I'm not going to do it justice, but it's like this whole thing about this, if it's a guy and all of the things he optimizes. And at the end of the essay, he gets like hit by a bus or something. And it's just like fucking hysterical. It's like, I will live longer and I will be the healthiest version of myself. He's just like, I forget, I might be telling it wrong, but it's just like so perfect because it's like, first of all, like who knows what the hell's going to happen in life, but also it was just perfect. I love it. I will link to that. I mean, I'm at the link in the show notes.
It is such like a human response to like our condition of like, none of us actually know how long we're going to be here. Our health, there are parts of it that are very much under our control, and there are a lot of parts of it that aren't under your control, especially if you're getting hit by a bus. And then like the way that we try to circle that square is with these just like absolutely batshit ideas about like wresting control back from genetics, back from gravity, back from the march of time, these things that we absolutely have like no chance against. And again, there are definitely parts that are under our control, but I feel like we just like extrapolate wildly to try to meddle in things that we can't, and we might be missing out on a lot of other beneficial things by trying to do so.
Well, and like we mentioned in the episode about like the different routines that people have, like their elaborate morning routine, and just thinking about that and like how much time and stress does something like staying on this strict routine to optimize, how much stress does that actually put on the body? Because it might not be reducing stress, it might be causing more stress, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the same can be said from like the way you eat. You know, we know that like obviously when people are like overly stressed about their food decisions and, you know, obsessing about every single thing they're going to eat and turning down social food related activity, like that is also a form of stress, you know? So yeah, no, for sure. And think kind of related to that whole idea of optimization, I think is the world of supplementation. That's another thing you guys explore. And you know, it's a little bit different. And it's similar and it's different, right? It's similar in the sense of supplements can be necessary and of course really helpful. And when we're seeking out like how to become better, you know, or how to really push ourselves, like, yeah, there's a role for supplements in many instances. But again, people can take it too far. People can be so obsessed with like one supplement, they lose focus, lose sight of the bigger picture and like the fact that they're not eating enough or all the other things we know are so much more important for health and performance. But yeah, I'm kind of curious in terms of, I mean, again, this is a huge topic, but it's something I have on, the top of my mind. I'm actually I haven't made it all the way through, but I've been listening to David Roche's interview on Rich Roll. I don't know if you guys listened to that one yet. But, you know, I mean, there are a lot of things that he uses for himself and many other pro athletes or recreational athletes use different supplements to kind of be the best athlete. And so, yeah, I don't know what you guys have to say about that stuff.
I feel like this is Kylie's jam.
Yeah.
No, I
start with you.
We bring up on our podcast, we have like the little button, like the N of 1 button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I think sometimes we have to think about like, how do we marry the science and the application? And, you know, how are we planning on trialing this or using it in practice? And yeah, honestly, it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, David's like pushing the limits with certain things and kind of becoming his own N of 1. Mm-hmm. But I also don't think that maybe, you know, everyone should just run out and start using sodium bicarb or, you know, some kind of like random technique to help with their performance. I think it's important to maybe have the conversation, like what are weighing out pros and cons and looking at, you know, what does the research say? What are the possible downsides of this? Like, what does this mean for me as a person? Do I want to drop $80 on 3 servings of bicarb? You know, it's like, these are all things to consider. And then also thinking about, this is not the sexy part, but like, what does my actual foundation look like? Like, what does the diet component look like? And there's a lot of people that they don't know like what David's doing for his like individual nutrition throughout the day. And they're just like, oh, that supplement that he's using. But, you know, you need to dial in those basics first and then potentially get into the supplementation piece.
Especially and also training and genetics and I mean, all of those other things, right?
That point, like with, you know, sodium bicarb, like, yes, it can help with like, you know, buffering lactate, but like if you're not already doing a shit ton of lactate threshold training, then what's like, it's not a magic potion. It has like a very specific, or in the existing evidence of which we would always like to see more to expand or complicate our understanding of this particular supplement. It's good at helping you buffer blood lactate. And if you're not if you're not training to also help your body do that, it's not going to magically extend your lactate threshold just because you ate $60 worth of soup, you know? And like, similarly, like with a lot of some of the other supplements we looked at as well, or even with like carbohydrate periodization, obviously it was a trend of late for people to try to manipulate their carbohydrate intake to hypothetically improve their fat oxidation when it's like, yo, you can just
train.
Like, you can do this for free. And like, also, you should be training anyway. And it's like people always get distracted with the bright, shiny object. Yeah. And again, like it's complicated when with things like, you know, with, you know, carbohydrate periodization or sodium bicarbonate, where there is limited evidence to show that it is beneficial in limited cases. But again, like I'm not going to go out, like I'm not running 100 miles, like just below my lactate threshold yet. So I'm going to skip.
Someday.
Someday. I need so many more intervals before I want to drop mad cash on that goo.
Yeah. I mean, ketones, I feel like is another one that we see, you know, and I know like, you know, David was speaking about that a bit, but like it's another one we see where like, okay, there is some evidence or there's mixed evidence and it depends on like when you're taking it. And, but another one of those things where it's like, oh, everyone's using it. And I think Kylee, you've even spoken to this before where, you know, anecdotally, we see people that seem to have a real benefit. And again, in various situations, not, you know, maybe it's cognitive, maybe it's recovery, like whatever. But yeah, that's another one where the science may not be like as caught up to the anecdotal stuff. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Kylee?
Well, I was actually going to kind of also talk about how like with the supplement industry, the regulation piece that we run up against too, I think it's really important to point out, you know, this is a big potential downside, you know, because a lot of companies are not doing that third-party testing.
Yes,
and even if they are, it still might not be 100% guarantee. It's wild. In the episodes, we looked at the history behind supplements and how people really, they don't want to let go of their supplements.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah. I remember you talking about it.
Even though like they're not regulated well by the FDA. And that freaking, I always think of that Mel Gibson freaking video that Zoe played in the episode. And
that was hilarious.
Cracking up. But point being is that, you know, we need to also be aware that the companies that you're choosing for your supplements, like look into them and make sure that you're trying to choose certified for sport. And even that is not 100% guarantee.
Yeah.
So sorry, I
totally
changed direction there.
No, you're totally good.
I was thinking of that and I was like, I have to bring this up so I don't forget.
Yes.
It's a pretty big loophole in our country. There's zero burden of proof. None.
Yeah.
Seems like we should fix that because it is, in Europe, you do have to prove a thing before you, if you want to market a supplement saying that it does something, you have to positively prove that in a clinical trial that it does, kind of similarly to how we regulate medication, but like you don't have to have as many clinical safety trials. In the US, you can continue to sell something until it kills like several people, and then we'll take a look at it, which is a wild way to view this. And
yes,
I think it's so telling that people are willing to take that risk because we are so attracted to the idea that popping a pill or eating a soup or rubbing something on our skin will have a big impact because it is much harder to think about doing years of aerobic based training. It's way less fun to think about all the aerobic threshold training you're going to have to do to improve your body's ability to shuttle lactate from your bloodstream. And it's so much easier to buy $65 worth of goo.
Yeah, totally. And it always like boggles my mind. Like I swear every client I get, I learn of more supplements I've never heard of. Like it's just endless. I don't know about you, Kylee. I just feel like I'm just like, what? I've never even heard of this product. I have to look up everything. Yeah, I look up all of like, what the fuck is this thing? It's like some sleep thing or some skin thing or hair. I don't know. It's endless.
A lot more like with coaching clients, I'm seeing a lot more adaptogens and nootropics.
Yes.
Those are tough because I'm like, you know, it's your body, you do you, but the evidence is mixed.
Yeah. Well, and then we get into things like, and we can circle back to the ketone thing now, and because it's related, we get back to the like, oh, well, I feel better when I do this. Cause like, I also don't want to like gaslight people if they're like, as long as it's safe. Obviously, if it's not like something I view as safe, I'll probably take them off to something if it's not safe. But if it's something where it's like, well, and of course the safety of supplements is questionable. We've established that, but so safe in quotes, I guess. But if something is like neutral to harmless to probably safe, and they're telling me like maybe it's their AG1, they're like, oh, but I just feel so much better taking it. And we see like all kinds of people taking AG1, like everywhere, you know, which I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
Emotional support supplement, like that's for you.
Yeah.
I think that like what I always try to educate folks on is like, here's what the evidence says. And like, we should all be aware that the placebo effect is absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
I have felt that with different interventions I have tried, and it is always so hard to like disentangle. Like, well, I do feel better. Is it this specific intervention, or is it like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have a real hard time limiting variables in my life.
Yes.
Like,
there's a lot who the hell knows what it is?
Not exactly an airtight chamber over here. So, I think that just educating people about the complexity and then ultimately trusting them to make the right decision for them. Because like on some stuff, it's like, maybe the worst, you spend a lot of money on goo and you crap your shorts. Like that's not the worst outcome. It's not ideal. It's not the best day you can have, but like, it's not, with like carbohydrate periodization where the risks, particularly for women, can be huge. So that's where I feel like I have a bit more responsibility to educate people around that. But when it's something like sodium bicarb or with ketones, I think there's emerging evidence that can have some longer term metabolic impacts that we might want to talk about. But I'd be curious how you approach that with folks like that balance that helps people understand the complexity, but ideally helps trust them to make the best decision for them.
Yeah, I do a similar thing to what you're saying. I think one part that might have been missing is like trying to educate on, so say it is AG1, educate on things like what is a proprietary blend, or if there's herbals in this supplement, like are you on medication? Do you have health conditions? Like a lot of people don't realize that those are real. There can be real long-term impacts. And then also like long-term herbal use, like, is that really great? Like there could be liver issues that crop up 3 years from now. Like, do you really want to take that risk? So I think explaining some of those things to people as well is part of it. And then if they are going to take something, again, like making sure it's a good product, because something that bugs me, I'm like very passionate about it, is like in the ketone industry, like there is a couple of companies and there's only one company that uses the full ketone ester. So like when people are talking about taking this other company's brand, I'm just like, you realize you're paying a lot of money. It might be less than the other company, but a lot of money for it to do not very much. Like,
and it absolutely tastes like something you would use to strip the paint off a speedboat.
Well,
I do not understand.
I have heard about it tasting. So I haven't tasted it yet, so I have not actually experimented in ketones, but I've heard
absolutely heinous. I need it to be pulling its weight.
You could just try one, Claire. And
I know.
Vomit,
I've been putting it off. I mean, I'm still traumatized from drinking my colonoscopy prep. I don't want to try anything else. Like that was traumatic for like a solid 2 months. I'm gonna wait on anything else disgusting.
I'm out on strong smelling clear liquids.
Yeah, no, that's so bad.
Even greens powders for me, I'm like, those things are freaking, I can't stand them. I think they're so like, gross.
I truly believe there is a thing in athletes where like the gnarlier something tastes, the more they're like, this has to be working. Cause like this tastes so gross that like it has to be medicinal. Like no one would drink this like absolute swamp water if it wasn't really healthy. I mean, it tastes like healthy, right? Like it's so gross that you're like, I am doing something for the love of God.
I'm so sensitive to taste, because like some of these products have stevia or monk fruit in it, and I literally cannot I can't with those like at all. And it's not a like when I talk to people about products with that, like that's my personal taste preference. I'm not concerned about the health of it, but I cannot take anything with that, and it's everywhere. It's like absolutely everywhere. So it drives me insane. Like even on the colonoscopy prep, it had some flavor packet, and I'm like, I am not putting the flavor packet in because that's gonna make it probably worse. Probably be some fake sweetener in there. I don't know. I did raw dog that 4 liters. Oh my god. But yeah, so yeah. You mentioned some ketone research. I would love to hear that if there's something you wanted to speak to there about it.
I mean, essentially, I wouldn't recommend using ketones during exercise at this time.
Yeah.
I've seen the potential benefits being more for a post-exercise recovery period, for helping with glycogen replenishment rates and potentially helping someone that has overtraining syndrome, but hopefully you don't get to that point. So that's why it's like, okay, maybe not, hopefully being in that spot and needing to take ketones. So that's where like education wise, if somebody asks me, I'm like, yeah, I really don't think you should be taking this during exercise. I think that post-exercise potentially could be beneficial. So if you want to try it then, And so I don't know if you approach it differently, but that's kind of when I'm chatting with people, that's kind of what I present.
And
I've been about the same.
Has come out, but there were at least several studies, particularly in elite cyclists, looking at it for its benefits and recovery, where like in the conclusion, they were like, well, it definitely seems to help. We can't tell if that's because it actually like the ketones are that helpful, or if because the way that it stimulates cyclist appetites, the people that took ketones on average consumed XYZ more calories per day. So like, was it the ketones, or was it the fact that
was it the food?
People eat more food, and here we are just again standing in a circle, pointing at the fact that food is great. And like, like just eat more food. Like you don't need to do the shots of like Satan's tequila to do that.
Yeah, totally. Oh my goodness. And just to remind people, so it's the ketone ester. So, you know, what are they looking for? If they do want to try it, I mean, I know this isn't a podcast about ketones, but since we're talking about it, just to kind of clarify that for people, because there are products out there that
we're looking
we don't want to take.
The whole ketone ester and not ketone salts.
Yep.
And also not a partial ketone ester. So without naming brands, I will leave it at that.
Sounds good. All right. So I thought just like a way to close it out a little bit. It'd be fun to get some of your nutrition hot takes if you have any, maybe just some things you've seen on socials, and maybe this has appeared in the podcast, maybe not, but you know, you guys are so immersed in the endurance space, just living where you do, and given, you know, you're both ultra runners and everything. So yeah, I'm curious kind of what's on your mind right now that you want to call out or call attention to.
What about you? What do you have?
Well, there's a lot of talk about seed oils.
Oh yes. Being inflammatory.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's like, I don't think it's a bad thing to focus on like our omega-6 and omega-3 consumption and maybe trying to increase our omega-3 consumption. But whenever, this is what we talked about at the beginning of like how we're demonizing certain things and going to extremes to try and get people to go one way or the other, like be in this black or white space. So I think, you know, I would use caution for people that are like, seed oils are bad, because I really don't think inherently they are bad. And this is, I think we're going to be entering a time period next year where we're going to have these kinds of hard conversations.
By that, what she means is like our DMs are going to be absolutely full of these batshit seed oil evangelists, or like the seed, like burn the seed oils people.
Yeah. And food dyes.
Not just seed oils that we're going to have to combat, unfortunately. But
yes,
looking at you, raw milkers.
Raw milk, food dyes,
which like, again, like these are things that would love to see more research on, and would love to see more nuanced conversation around, and would love to see them I would love to see them taken seriously by serious people and not a brainworm.
That's a hot take.
Yes. Also, I feel like with a lot of this stuff, they're focusing on like the tip of the iceberg, or just like a grain of sand amidst like so many other things that are bigger and more important that could really affect health. So yeah, no, I hear you there.
And like we're doing an episode soon about sports nutrition marketing, because like Kylee and I's big bugaboo is just the insane deranged things that
oh my god
are allowed to say and selling your product. It's like Ozempic, but for runners.
Yes, I was going to say that one.
It just isn't. That's not how Ozempic works. That's not how running works. That's not how eating while running works. You can't eat Ozempic, by the way. As far as I'm aware, that's not an edible thing. And you should definitely not be eating GLP-1s during exercise. Like, it just is this like combining of buzzwords where it's like, we recognize that lots of runners want to lose weight, and we're going to Frankenstein together this absolutely heinous combination of like diet culture buzzwords that sound sciencey, but like if you think about it for more than 3 seconds is so meaningless as to be comical. Like Kylee is still laughing. Yeah. You know, it's insane. And I would love to see a framework where they're held accountable, like where like a company can't just continue to say we're like GLP-1s, but for runners, where like, why can't we there have been reckonings around expectations of endurance sports nutrition companies, including have carbohydrates that you say you have.
And oh God, Spring had like the worst marketing language. It was so bad.
And I mean, even their like Spring's marketing language was heinous as well.
Terrible.
Like,
I know.
The way that they like, and I think it's so telling that they succeeded in the world of like endurance and trail, and like no marathoners were using their stuff. And I would love to see, you know, even us crunchy like granola ultra folks have more serious conversations about food and performance and a more nuanced understanding of like, you know, the word natural doesn't inherently communicate better, like having like real understandings and level setting about what these things mean and what they don't mean, and why we see sports nutrition companies trying to weaponize this language to prey on people who are insecure about their bodies and insecure about their sports performance. And as a community, we've seen that we have the power to affect this change. So like, let's leverage that against all the companies that are doing this deranged nonsense.
Yeah, I always laugh when I see like organic or non-GMO like on a freaking sports nutrition. Like what? First of all, I mean that's like a whole thing. Are you guys doing an episode on that? By the way, I was gonna say you are okay. Good. I was like, yeah, I like touched on in my show, but I did not do it justice at all, and I feel like you guys would really do a great job on that. So I'm very much looking forward to the organic GMO discussion,
where I feel like we're launching a grenade into.
I know. Oh, I got hate messages. Just you know, like I loved you until you put this out there.
We're doing again, like I think our thing is trying to undo a lot of the dogma that exists in nutrition because it shouldn't be nearly as dogmatic. Like I have learned time and time again that I'm just wrong about a bunch of shit on the podcast, and I love that because I want to be more correct in the future. My identity is not tied up in a way of eating. It's tied up in, or it's increasingly, I'm trying to form an identity that's around like connection and health and curiosity, as opposed to like rigidity and like belonging and like us versus them, black and white, and moralizing things. And I get concerned seeing that I feel like that is increasingly infiltrating the particularly ultra endurance space, but running and fitness in general.
And our country.
And our country. Jesus Christ.
Any other kind of things that are, you know, top of mind or things you've observed, whether it's kind of out in the world, in races and socials, anything else?
Well, it kind of goes along with the marketing piece, and this has been around forever, but like sugar being bad and like gels containing sugar. And it's like, are you like kidding me? We want carbohydrates during exercise. So I eat the sugar. And then also like this episode that we did about sugar, it's like in daily life too, it's much more complicated. It's again, the extremes here and people taking this one cult-like stance.
I think the take that I think is the worst that I hear, especially as someone who like, I'm an environmental journalist is my day job. And I try to do a lot of work in like the overlap between environmental stewardship and outdoor recreation. And I always hear runners being like, I'm so nervous about how much waste I generate when I eat gels. And I'm like, that is the smallest potatoes. Like, I think that it is so harmful. Like, yes, gels, like, are they the most environmentally friendly thing? No, they are not. But I think that making people feel guilty for consuming fuel that they need to support their exercise to the detriment of focusing on things that would actually move the needle on climate, like political action, consuming less, holding companies accountable. Like every time you eat one less gel to quote unquote save the planet or whatever, like there's an oil executive just like absolutely laughing on his way to the bank. And it so positions these individual solutions as being the thing we need to focus on. And also you can recycle gel packages, get in touch with TerraCycle. They will do that for you. It is so easy and they do it for free. So that's not a good excuse. And I feel like it's this very weird positioning of like people, I think sometimes are looking for any reason to not like gels. And that is bizarre to me. And like, if you don't want to eat gels, that is your decision, but please quit telling people that it is good for the climate. We do not have the evidence to support that. And there is so much more evidence showing that there are plenty of other bigger things to focus on, that I don't think that going into an energy deficit and like not getting enough carbohydrates and not fueling your exercise is the most meaningful way for us to push back against climate change. Like literally just write to your senator.
It's that, that isn't something I've actually encountered. I mean, it makes sense when you think about like generating garbage or waste. I don't actually hear that ever. Do you hear that in your practice,
Yes.
Kylee? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe my clientele is not very environmentally conscious. I hear more about like, I don't want to take it because of like GI stuff or because like I don't want to gain weight or like that kind of the other things. But that's an interesting take on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say like gels for the climate.
Gels for the, oh my God, that's so
for climate change.
Oh my goodness. That's something else.
Back in 10 years and it was totally my fault that the climate's burning. Like I'll take that on my nose. I will accept responsibility for all the carbs I've eaten. I'm willing to be ingrained that way.
Yeah, I think there are many other things we can do. I agree.
So
oh my goodness. That's so funny. Awesome. Well, I mean, you both have so much going on like individually and together. And I thought I just want to check in briefly with each of you. Kylee, how's recovery going after your surgery? You just had a huge surgery and I know you've been working hard to recover from that. How are you feeling?
It is, well, it was kind of like a step forward, even though it was a step backward, but a step forward in the sense, with Achilles surgery, it's like such a long recovery process. And I'm about to enter the phase where, I get into a shoe, which then you feel like a normal person kind of, but then that's where you like want to push, but I'm not going to be able to push. So I think that's going to be like the hardest part.
Like a normal shoe? Like from like a boot to like an actual, like a normal sneaker. Okay, got it.
To a regular sneaker. And
Kylee has insanely strong footwear game.
Awesome.
And like with my dogs and stuff, it's hard because I have 3 Aussies and like they need to exercise. So that's been difficult not exercising them. So yeah, I mean, step forward being that I've struggled with like Hogland's Achilles issues for 12 years and it was like time because my Achilles was ripping. So kind of like, okay, well now I've tried a lot of things. Like I tried a lot of alternative therapy type things to try and avoid surgery. And then I did a lot of work with my strength trainer and it just could not move that needle. And so move forward with it and feel good about my decision and just, hopefully can be out there running next summer, fall.
Well, I was, I know you like said it was a problem for so long, and I was like seeing you do these, decently long runs like all the time. Like you said, you and Zoe go for it. You pace Zoe and Leadville. Like I was like, how are you doing? Like, were you just like in pain all the time? Like
probably like not a good example to set for people, but like we are all our own worst examples sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I would do runs and like limp around for 3 days afterwards. So it's kind of a thing where I would, because I love running trails so much and like supporting people in their endeavors, that I would do that and then suffer for 3 days.
Oh my goodness.
But hopefully moving forward now.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's never a great time, but obviously you have a ton going on because you have a book coming out. Do you want to shout out your book, which is so exciting? I know you've been working hard on it for a long time.
Also for 3 years, I think this is like 3 years ago is when I had to reduce my running volume. And I was like, okay, now it's a good time to put more stress on the body by writing a book. Probably not the best idea, but yeah, practical fueling for endurance athletes. I'm super excited about it. Worked with Human Kinetics on it. And I think, it was a challenge writing this while running a business and doing all the things.
I can only imagine.
But I think, if you do a search, like a quick search on Google, it's quite hard to find an endurance nutrition book, especially one that I intentionally did not include weight loss or body comp change as the focus in. So this is all going to be performance focused. And so, if you're looking for weight loss, body comp change, it's probably not going to be the book for you, but that's okay. Like I wanted to do something different. And then, it's a book where it allows, like, this is kind of my coaching style, where I want people to understand the information, but also how can I apply this information, So has a lot of like little tidbits from pro athletes in all realms of endurance sports in it, like skiing and cycling and all the things, and a lot of like sample amazing recipes from Kelly Newland, who runs Rad in Boulder, and she's a chef. So there's just it's a good combo of like things that you can actually implement into your life. So I'm excited about it.
Yay. Well, I can't wait to read it. It's super cool. Zoe, so you had a big summer. You finished second in Leadville, which is super amazing. Congrats on that. I know.
Nutritionist for
yeah, totally. And you're a comedian, you're a writer, you're a journalist, you're a podcast producer. So much great stuff going on. Like, what is going on for you in 2025? What are you excited about for the next year?
I'm genuinely so excited about Your Diet Sucks. Like having, written a book and like done like larger journalistic projects. I love that every 2 weeks I get to dive into and obsess about a topic and learn, like go really deep on something. Like every 2 weeks I get to make something with my best friend that I'm genuinely proud of and is like challenging. Like I walk away from every episode being like, oh shit, I didn't know that, or I was wrong about this. And I feel like in some ways, like, yes, I know more, but I also walk away with a profound humility about how little I know about nutrition, about other people's lives, about why we as humans make the decisions we make. And I just don't know that I felt so professionally excited about or like personally attached to a project, especially one where we get to like bring ourselves as people. I think it works because our professional experience sort of sets the foundation that it needs to work. But then I feel like it's animated by our connection as friends and by our like genuine excitement and passion for food and fueling and understanding why we make the decisions we make. And so like, I genuinely like, it's always like, I'm always trying to not put too much of my identity eggs in the work basket, but gosh, it is so cool to have a project that I just feel like every day I wake up and I'm excited to think about it. I'm excited to work on it. I'm excited to text Kylee about the ideas I have. And sorry about all the early morning texts.
That's great. I mean, you can really tell that you guys are having a fun time. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congrats again on the show. Thanks again for coming on my show and sharing all of that awesome information with my listeners. Where can everyone find, I guess, each of you individually, your podcast, all the stuff?
Yeah, so Fly Nutrition 3 on Instagram. And then we have our Your Diet Sucks pod on Instagram as well. And then we can be found on all the various platforms.
Yeah, are you guys doing video? Are you on YouTube yet? Or no?
No, we try.
No video.
Because there's so much research involved in the episodes, we tried video for like 2 episodes, and it was like no one wants to just watch ladies read research.
Yeah.
But we're on every podcast platform, and we do put some like cute video content out on our Instagram.
Yes. I love your little short things that you put out.
I love diet culture memes. And you can find me at carrot_flowers_Z.
What does that name come from?
I got really high while listening to Neutral Milk Hotel one time and changed my Instagram handle.
And it just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And Kylee, who's Fly Nutrition 1 and 2? Are you Fly Nutrition 3?
No. We're just like a smoothie place. Like a Fly Nutrition is like a smoothie company or something. And
that's
I have
funny.
No idea where, but I've definitely gotten emails from people being like wanting to try some certain smoothie. And I'm like, what? This is not me. Like, I don't have a storefront.
I'm always curious where the names come from. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time and coming on. It was such fun time chatting.
Awesome, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
That's our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed that one. And if you did, please make sure you hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen. Share it with a friend who could use this information. And if you have a minute, I would be so grateful if you could also rate and review my show. If you're able to support the show financially, I do have a Patreon page. I'd love to see you over there. Patreon members get some great perks, including free merch, huge discounts on my digital downloads, and much more. I also have some affiliate links that, you can just do your normal shopping. So at no cost to you, you can support the show. For instance, Scratch Labs, if you like their products, I personally love them. You can use the code EATFORENDURANCE20 and get 20% off if you are a new customer. If you love momentous stuff, you can also use the code EATFORENDURANCE15 and get 15% off your purchase. You can see all my discount codes and affiliate links over on the shop page on my website, eatforendurance.com. All right, thank you again so much for your support. Feel free to reach out if you ever want to, Claire at eatforendurance.com, with any feedback, questions, or topic requests. Thank you so much. See you all next time.